What's up, Dragon Brood? So today we are talking about Core Set 21 decks, or new standard decks using Core Set 21 cards. And honestly, we're going to be doing that for a couple of days, because I just like building decks, and we're going to need to build some anyway coming up, and I figured I should share them with y'all, because I'm sure you're looking for new decks. So I'll start with some of the more popular stuff, and then we'll get into some more of the more obscure stuff. But for today, I think we need to update the lighting. There we go. That's more appropriate. So we're going to be talking about MONORED today. I know y'all don't see it that often on the channel. Usually I'll build it if I have some kind of cool gimmick or something different. But there's a few new cards in Core Set 2021 that actually lend themselves to this. So before we get into that, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, because at the very least, you'll get to be notified whenever I put up all those other new deck videos. But let's go take a look at the deck. Alright, so if we're just breaking this down, for the majority of the cards here, you're not going to be that surprised of what's in the list. A lot of it's going to look like the other red Cavalcade decks, but we did make a few adjustments to give it a little more oomph, I guess is the best word I have for it. I don't really know, but let's take a look. So here we've got 4 Grim Initiate, and the reason is this card's a first striker. It's a 1/1. It'll still get in under the Cavalcade and deal some damage. Plus, whenever it dies, it amasses, which sometimes results in you getting a 2/2 or a 3/3 if you draw multiples of them early. Otherwise, they block it, it dies, you get another 1/1, which is pretty sweet. Scorch Spitter's also pretty nice. It's another 1/1 that deals consistent damage. We added Shock to this list, and this is probably going to be one of the more questionable cards over what some other people build for theirs. But for me, it was important because we're playing some cards, like you'll see in a second, that trigger from your opponent taking non-combat damage, and you want to increase those opportunities. Plus, it's a reasonable damage card. There's a lot of times you get to kill like an early Pelt Collector or maybe an early Stonecoil Serpent. I mean, there's just a bunch of little things. Or occasionally you just need 2 more points to pick off a Planeswalker, or keep something like Narset from searching for a second card. Like, sometimes that's enough. Obviously the Cavalcade's in there. We knew this was going to be powerful, so this isn't a surprise. It's kind of what we're building around. But if we can take a look here at this Chandra's Pyreling, this is kind of one of the big reasons we're playing this deck. It's a 1/3, so it doesn't look real big, for 2 mana, 1 colorless, 1 red. But each time you deal a non-combat source of damage to your opponent, this card gets +1, +0, and it gains double strike. Like, that is really big, because when you're talking about attacking, say with this and 1 or 2 other creatures, you get multiple triggers that count from the Cavalcade. That's going to trigger this multiple times. This makes it that much harder for your opponent to be able to even block it, because it's getting double strike, which is crazy. So this becomes a card your opponent has to get rid of, and it's a 3 toughness, so it survives quite a few things. So would not sleep on this card if you're going to be playing any similar type of red decks. We are playing 3 copies of Forbidden Friendship, which this card's been overlooked a little bit, but for this type of deck it's pretty good. For 2 mana you get 2 creatures, one of which has haste, which is pretty nice, you know, and that's not to be underestimated either. Like, getting in, especially when you have a Cavalcade, that's almost like saying you get a 1/1 and a 1/1 that deals 1 damage, you know, and that all matters. So just saying, it's a card, if you're not playing it, really give it a look if you're playing these really fast red aggro decks. We're playing 3 copies of an X. There's 1 up here and then 2 over here. And again, this card's just reasonable. Whenever it dies, it gives you some other 1/1s. Totally makes sense. Nothing out of the ordinary there. If it ends up just being large, great. You get to fight with it. A couple of copies of Chandra's Acolyte, Acolyte of Flame. The biggest thing here is we're playing it, but we don't have that many spells really to get back with Chandra. You know, we have the Shock. You're going to see in a second we have stuff like Light Up the Stage. But for the most part, we're just playing it just to make the 2 elementals. Then we have Chandra Spitfire. We're playing 3 of these. So when you start talking about combining the Spitfire with this Chandra's Pyreling, well, now anytime damage happens to your opponent, you're actually stacking on a ton of extra damage, and these allow you to close the game very quickly. So that's something I would really consider. I'm only playing 3 light up this stage, and this is the part that kind of bugs me. I feel like this deck should be playing 4, but as I wanted to try to find room for like an extra shock, where I wanted to play a full set of Pyrelings, I already cut one of the Spitfires, really didn't have that much room left to be able to put in that extra copy of light up the stage. So hopefully you don't need it, but you know, something's got to give. And maybe it's this card right here, 1 Subera. This isn't super, this is more like an experimental card, right? It's 3 mana, it's a 2/3. She does have haste, which I like. You know, if you draw it, you can just immediately fight with it. Does give you a chance to kind of cycle your hand for some cards, which is nice. But it can also make all of your creatures practically unblockable. So if you have a situation where you can make the Pyreling or the Spitfire unblockable, that might just be it. I mean, you know, you make it unblockable, you shock your opponent, and that's 3 extra damage, and that can just be it. You know, so it may turn out this card's really good and we won't end up having a second or a third copy. It might just be a failed experiment, but we'll see. Then we've got TCGPlayer. I think some people debate on when you need Torbrands or when you need Embercleaves. I think for this list, especially since you're playing the Pyrelings, since you're playing the Spitfires, since you're playing the Cavalcade, you really do want Torbrands. And then the lands, straightforward. We're playing 22, and we're playing 4 Castle Empress, and the rest are mountains. I haven't built a sideboard for this yet, because I feel like for the red decks, you really need to know kind of where things are headed in the format to be able to make sure what you need to be doing as far as what you're trying to target and what you're trying to dodge. But right now, I think I built a version that's at least reasonably flexible. It doesn't necessarily just get outright blown out if your opponent gets a big sweeper or some life gain something. It has the ability to hit really hard. So if you're a red deck player, I would give this one a look. I'm a big fan of it. I don't generally play a lot of red decks, but this will definitely be one of the first decks I put together and test, just to see if it even works. I also appreciate that I'm getting to use a few of the new cards, which always makes me happy when a new set comes out, because I really hate playing a deck when a new set comes out and only using 2 copies of something and going see, I use new cards. Actually, this one actually does make real use of a few new cards, which I like. But again, if you haven't, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I'm going to be putting up probably 3 or 4 more of these deck lists leading up to the, I guess we call it the early access event that I'll be participating in. And then following up with videos of me playing some of these decks, so you kind of get to see them in action. But for now, that's all I have. We'll see you next time.